this is Megan.
And this is Mark.
Welcome to our second video journal of the Marvel Land construction at Disney California Adventure Park. Today's June 8th, 2019.
Scaffolding has been added to the outside of the Spider-Man building since we've been here last. This is what it looked like at the end of May, and I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today. We can also see that stacks of metal studs have been brought in to be used for the exterior walls of the building. Wall studs are typically used to make up the wall framing. Not only are they used to help give shape to a building once they're installed, but they're also used to hold in place sheathing, siding, insulation, and utilities. Next, we'll go and Pixar Pal around to see what we can observe from there. We can see the newly added scaffolding from this perspective, and if we look to the right, more dirt has been added to the pile. More than likely, this is a temporary dirt staging area until the trenches for the utility piping are ready to be filled. Next, we'll go ahead and peek through the fence right about here. We can see the trench boxes located in the trenches. Once the work is completed in the trenches, dirt from the pile that we observed will be used to fill in the trenches. Notice the building located in the middle of the picture. As mentioned in part 1, this building was the old restrooms from A Bug's Land, and it'll be interesting to see what the new look of this building will be. This is what it looked like in A Bug's Land. Now if we look behind this building, we can see the side portion of the Spider-Man building. And here's a picture of the portion of the building from the Pixar Pal-Around perspective. Looking to the right, we can see that the trench continues off to the side. A green PVC pipe can be seen extending down into the trench. This type of pipe is used for storm drainage purposes.
Today's June 12th, 2019.
Some of the exterior steel beams have had fireproofing done to them. This is what it looked like a few days ago, and I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today. And this fireproofing is made up of a cement-like and fibrous materials such as the minerals gypsum and vermiculite. It basically makes the beams more resistant to extreme temperatures. Next, we'll go and Pixar Pal around. More dirt is in the process of being added to the pile. More than likely, more trenches are being dug. Next, we'll peek over the fence near the Guardians of the Galaxy attraction. They're continuing to add the dirt.
Today's June 18th, 2019.
The metal studs for the exterior walls are now in position on the side of the building. Studs are commonly spaced 16 inches from each other. On the other side of the building, a worker is in the process of welding connector plates to the horizontal beams. These connector plates will connect the vertical metal studs to the horizontal beams of the building. Now if we look up, the tallest beam structure of the building has new writing on the front end since we saw it last. It says Monkey IW 433, which was put up there by the ironworkers who are working on the project. Ironworkers Local 433 of Los Angeles. And here's another one at the back end of the beam structure. Ironworkers are sometimes referred to as steel monkeys, and it's interesting that the safety lines attached to the ironworkers are sometimes referred to as monkey tails. This is what the beam structure looked like when it was installed back in May. And as we went over in part 1, the beam structure was signed by electricians, ironworkers, and Imagineers. And unfortunately, some of the writing has faded over time, such as Imagineer Brett Strong, which looks like he used a different type of pen. Alright, now I'll dissolve the picture back to what the beam structure looks like today. Also in part 1, we talked about the Spider-Man symbol and the abbreviation to the right of it. Originally, we thought the letters were WED, standing for WED Enterprises, which is the name for Walt Disney Imagineering, which would be appropriate. However, if you look closely, there's an indentation here. And it turns out this letter is a B rather than a D. So the beam actually says WEB, standing for Worldwide Engineering Brigade. And Tony Stark was the founder of this. And the concept is that Webb will develop enhancements in superpowered technology by bringing together the world's brightest inventors. From this perspective, we can see a wheel loader being used to transfer dirt from the pile to fill in some of the trenches. And while this is being done, a green padfoot compactor is being used to compact the dirt in a trench.
Today's June 27th, 2019.
Debris netting has been put up in front of the scaffolding. This is what it looked like last week, and I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today. If you look closely, you can see that metal studs are now in position on this side of the building as well. From this perspective, we can see that a crane has been brought in, and it's being used to install beams for a new building, located right here. It'll be interesting to find out what this building will be used for. We'll go down to Cars Land to see what we can observe from that perspective. The crane is continuing to lift beams into place. We have a good view from this location over by Guardians of the Galaxy. Here, ironworkers are putting one in position. Notice that the worker near the center of the picture used a podger. This is used for lining up bolt holes. And here comes another beam. Now this worker, as you can see, is moving to the other side of the beam to attach it in place. Now that the beams are fastened together, the podger is removed from the beams, and the worker on the right releases the crane cable.
Today's July 6th, 2019.
Part of one of the exterior walls of the Spider-Man building has been removed. The metal studs in this location are now visible. Here's what it looked like back on May 30th. In part 1, we saw ironworkers install beams through the 7 slits that were made on the sidewall, attaching beams to other beams located inside the building. Now I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today. More than likely, the metal studs that we see here will be taken out to expand the building outward. Next, we'll go peek through the fence over by Guardians of the Galaxy. The trenches for the pipes in this area have been completely filled. This is what it looked like last month, and I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today. Alright, here's a different angle from last month, and I'll dissolve the picture back to what it looks like today.
Today's July 13th, 2019.
Workers are in the process of taking down another segment of the outer wall of the old It's Tough to Be a Bug Theater. And they're doing this to continue modifying it for the Spider-Man attraction. This worker is using a mallet to break up the stucco. Now they're removing components of the wall such as stucco netting and a weather-resistant barrier. And here we can see insulation and metal studs, which will eventually be removed as well. Next, we'll go on Pixar Pal Around to view this location from that perspective. And there it is. Next, if we look down on the ground level, it looks like ducts for an HVAC system are being brought in. HVAC is short for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Now if we look up to the left-hand side of the building, we can see that steel decking has been added to the beams on the top. Eventually wire mesh or rebar will be added, and then concrete. Next, if we look to the right, steel decking has been added to the top of this structure as well. Also, a concrete boom pump has been brought in. The end of the hose of the pump is positioned in a trench. We'll go over on the other side to get a better view. The concrete is being poured in a trench to make a wall footing. The function of a wall footing is to spread the weight load of the wall across an area of soil. And the concrete was poured over rebar to give the concrete structural strength. This is very similar to the wall footings we saw made during the Galaxy's Edge construction, as seen here. And what we're looking at is the perimeter wall of the docking bay for the Rise of the Resistance attraction. This is a good example because it shows a completed portion of a footing that has already been cured, and over here the rebar is set up for concrete to be added. Now if you look closely, you can see a worker in the distance guiding the end of the hose to add the concrete. As they continue to add the concrete, two other workers are welding steel decking in place on top of the structure.
Today's July 17th, 2019.
Workers are in the process of installing metal support structures on top of this building's steel decking. Next, we can see that the perimeter fence has been extended out. This is what it looked like 4 days ago, and I'll dissolve the picture to what it looks like now. Workers are continuing to do trench work, and from here you can see vertical rebar extending out at the wall footings. And if you look closely, you can see safety caps at the end of the rebar. They are yellow and orange to make them more visible. Now over here at the Spider-Man building, a telehandler is lifting sheathing panels for the walls. We'll go on the ground level to get a closer look. Stacks of panels are distributed in various locations to get them ready to be installed. As you can see, a lot more panels still need to be lifted to the building. It's interesting, the sheathing is coated with fiberglass, which is the purple layer, and there is a moisture and mold resistant gypsum core. Gypsum is a mineral that is a heat resistant, moisture preserving, sound absorbing, and fireproofing material. These panels will be attached to the exterior wall framing, such as the metal studs. At the top of the building, a worker is using a circular power saw to cut a steel decking sheet. He's cutting it so it'll fit where it needs to go. Now the worker is putting the decking into place.
Today is July 25th, 2019.
We're over by Guardians of the Galaxy, and the wall that has been expanded out is now blocking the access to the Guardians of the Galaxy Fast Pass station. As a result, where we pick up Fast Passes has been relocated over here. A crane is on site and is being used to add beams to create a new building. We can see from this perspective a couple columns have been installed. And they're in the process of installing more. Here's one being lifted to be put in position. Notice that this column has a gusset plate. More than likely, a diagonal beam will be attached to this plate. And there it goes. The crane is continuing to lift the columns. Next, we'll go on Pixar Pal Around to get a view of this area from that perspective. Here we can see the columns that have already been placed in position. There is a cluster of columns and other beams that are on the ground ready to be installed.
Today is July 27th, 2019.
They're continuing to construct the new building. Horizontal beams are in the process of being added to the columns. The crane is lifting a couple beams to be put in position. Next, we'll go on Pixar Pal Around. Part of this building is being constructed where Flix Flyers used to be located. Beams are continuing to be lifted and installed into place. Disney hasn't announced yet what this building will be used for. It'll be interesting to see if they'll announce something at the D23 Expo next month. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The crane is being lowered, and the workday is coming to an end. Well, that's a taste of things to come.
We can't wait to see what they build next.